A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. Part 2. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Chapter 7, Part 5. Of the second way to hinder peace. Affrightments, the general nature and burden of them, in several particulars. What are the ways by which he affrights? And more. As if it were necessary that every man knew God's eternal purpose concerning him before he begin his endeavors. And as he argues, some men into a perverse carelessness, upon the ground of election, making them to conclude that if they are ordained to life, they shall be saved, though they live wickedly. If they be not, they shall be damned, though they endeavor never so much to the contrary. So he also argues some, from this doctrine, into terrible fears of damnation, because they cannot be assured aforehand, that their names are written in heaven. And these dreadful suspicions he doth labor to strengthen, by some men's unwary handling of the doctrine of non-election. When some preachers unskillfully urge the dangerous signs of reprobation, or speak severely of God's decrees, without due caution and promise of mercy, to all penitent sinners. Or when some, unskillful in the methods of comforting the distressed in conscience, because they are not able to show the afflicted their condition, or to speak a word in season to quiet their minds, and to direct them what course to take, do usually refer them to God's decree, and tell them, if God have decreed them to salvation, they shall be saved. Satan doth industriously hold them there. By this means he leads them from their promises and their duty, and keeps them musing and poring upon election, till they are bewildered, and cannot find the way out. Thus have several continued, under their affrightments for many years. 4. We may observe, that when Satan hath brought them into this snare, he doth tyrannically domineer over them. He doth deride them under their trouble, and mock at them when their fear comes upon them. And because now the very thought or hearing of election, is as a dagger to the heart, and a dreadful sound in their ears, he delights to repeat it to them. For the very naming of the word, becomes as dreadful as the sentence of condemnation, to a malefactor, being always accompanied with this reflection, "Oh, how miserable am I, that have no part nor portion in it." Besides, he doth busy their minds, with imaginary representations of hell, and sets before them, as in a scheme, the day of judgment, the terrors of the damned, the sentence against the goats on the left hand, the intolerable pains of everlasting burnings, and that which is the misery of all these miseries, the eternity of all. Thus he forceth their meditations, but still with application to themselves. Neither doth he suffer them to rest in the night, but they are terrified with sad dreams, and the visions of the night do disquiet them. 5. How grievous this affrightment is, I should next observe. But that is partly expressed, in the aforegoing particulars, and may yet more fully appear, by a consideration of these three things. First, that a man hath nothing dearer to him, than his soul. Alas! That cannot be counterbalanced, by the gaining of the whole world, and to have no hope or expectancy of its salvation, must needs be terribly affrightful. Second, these suspicions of non-election prevailing, all promises and comforts, are urged in vain, and they commonly return them back again, to those that offered them with this reply, they are true and useful, to those unto whom they appertain, but they belong not unto me. Nay, all means are rejected as useless. If such be advised to pray or read, they will in their fit of affrightment, refuse all. Upon this reason, that they are not elected. And then to what purpose, say they, is prayer, or any endeavors? For who can alter his decree? And, indeed, if their affrightments continued, at a height without intermission, they would never do anything. But this is their help, that some secret underground, hopes which they espy not, do revive, at least sometimes, and put them upon endeavors which, through God's blessing, become means of better information. Third, though Satan's injections of non-election be altogether unprovable, and withal so terrifying, that it might be supposed men should not be forward in their belief of so great an unhappiness. Yet can he prevail so far, that the persons above named, especially the melancholy, are made to believe him, and this chiefly by possessing their imaginations, with his frequent confident affirmations. We see it is a common practice to teach birds musical notes and sounds, which is only by constant repetition, till a strong impression is made upon their fancy. And thus, may one man impose upon the imagination of another, with his songs or sayings. For what we hear often, we cannot forbear to repeat in our thoughts, being strongly fixed upon our fancy. No wonder, then, if Satan, by often repeating, "Thou art not elected, thou art damned," etc., do form so strong an impression upon the imagination, that poor amazed creatures learn to say after him, and then take the echoes of their fancy, to be the voice of conscience condemning them. Now, then, if the unhappiness suspected, be the greatest beyond all comparison, if these suspicions entertained, cut off all succors of comfort, that may rise from the promises of God, and the endeavors of man, if Satan can prevail with men, to entertain them, with any persuasion, as we see he can, how dreadfully will these persuasions recoil upon a man. And thus will his thoughts run, I am persuaded I am not elected. And if not elected, then comforts and prayers are all in vain. And if these be in vain, there is no possibility of salvation, nor the least hope of a who knows, or a peradventure. And if that, O unspeakably miserable! Under these astonishing thoughts, doth Satan exercise their hearts, by suspicions of non-election. But 4. Sometimes he takes another course to affright men, and that is by injecting motions, of some abominable sin, or evil into their minds, to the commission whereof, he seems strongly to solicit. Yet not with any full intention, or expectation of prevalency, but with a purpose to molest, and disquiet. And for that end, he commonly chooseth such sins, as are most vile in their own nature, and most opposite to the dispositions of men. Thus, he injects thoughts of uncleanness to a chaste person, thoughts of injustice and wrong to a just man, thoughts of revenge and cruelty to a weak man, thoughts of rejoicing in the loss and misery of others to the merciful man. Or else, he injects motions to such sins wherein, formerly men have been overtaken, but have been made bitter by deep repentance, the very thoughts whereof are now become most loathsome. And sometimes he pursues man with thoughts of self-murder, even while there is nothing of discontent, or trouble in their minds, to second such a temptation. By this manner of proceeding, he creates great affrightments to the hearts of men. 4. 1. These are strange surprisals. And persons under this kind of trouble, cannot but be amazed to find such thoughts within them, which are most contrary to their dispositions, or their most serious resolves. The chaste person tempted to uncleanness, or the just man to revenge. The humble person urged to the same sin, that cost him so dear, etc. They wonder at their own hearts, and while they mistake these temptations, by judging them, to be the issues of their own inclination, with astonishment they cry out, Oh, I had thought that, I had mortified these lusts, but what a strange heart have I! I see sin is as strong in me as ever. And I have cause to fear myself, etc. 2. And this is yet a greater trouble, because usually, Satan takes them at some advantage, of an offered occasion or opportunity, then he gives them a sudden push, and with importunity, urgeth them to take the time. This often affrights them into trembling, and their fears do so weaken their purposes, that their hazards are the greater, in that they are astonished into an inactivity. So that in this case, the men of might do not readily find their hands. 3. Neither are these motions sudden, and transient glances, which perish as soon as they are born, though it be a very frequent thing with Satan, to cast in motions, into the heart for trial's sake, without further prosecution. But he, in this case, pursues with frequent repetitions, following hard after them, to the increase of the affrightment. So that for a long time together, men may be afflicted, with these messengers of Satan to buffet them. And though they may pray earnestly, against them, that they may be removed, yet they find the motions continue upon them. Which must needs be a hateful annoyance to an upright heart, that doth know it to be only Satan's design to affright. Much more must it afflict those, that do not perceive the contriver, and end of such motions, but judge them, to be the natural workings of their own evil heart. Thanks.